Chris, how is Tom Stewart going? Is he a certain starter for Easter Monday?
Yeah, he's fine. As we said, he had gastro, so if the game was 24 hours later, he would have been fine to play.
You expecting any other changes for tomorrow?
No others beside that one. But as always, we haven't even had our last meeting yet, so and we don't name the team to tonight, which is a good progression from where we have been in the past, where you've got to name a team, on a Thursday before a Monday game. But no, Stewart in is the obvious change, and then the rest will probably just wait for sure until we officially put the teams in.
A bit has been discussed about Geelong's laid out for the last few weeks. I mean, would you prefer that sort of model where you are naming the team the night before your games rather than on a Thursday for, say, a Saturday, for example?
Well, it's more logical. I think I did some media last Monday, and it is true to say I just don't care about the discussion around it. But if you do want a little bit more explanation, I'm happy to provide it. So say, for example, the Melbourne game, an hour before the game, we had a player that was touch and go with a foot issue. How do you want us to mitigate that? Like, what should when we name a team, should we just not change it? 2 weeks in a row, we had guys wake up with gastro. What's the fix for that? Should we not make a late change? So if you can find a situation where you think we've just made a frivolous late change for the sake of it, bring it up and I'll explain it to you.
Chris, obviously a long break between games. Is it hard to maintain that momentum? Obviously, 1-2 in a row, or do you just take the break while you can?
I think you've got to move with the ebbs and flows of the season to an extent, and it does fall into the category of whatever you'd prefer is largely irrelevant. You just got to play the cards that you're dealt. And we had, from memory, I move on pretty quickly, but I think it was 2 6-day breaks post the Brisbane game, and we've got a good record there. But every year, when we look at the draw and we see the longer breaks, we see opportunity there as well. So we did have some players that were, a little sore sort of off the last game, and they would really relish the longer break. We might have other guys that were like, I'm feeling the momentum, I just want to play a little bit earlier. So it's each to their own a bit. Trying to get a feel for what the overall group of 23 players are feeling is always hard. And then if you look at the opposition as well, there's different ways to cut it up. Often teams will say when they play less than their best that they can't wait to get going again, and a short break helps them. I try to make it a policy not to think about what all this stuff means. You just prepare as well as you can, and we feel like we've had a good preparation. We're ready to play well.
Where are Hawthorn most dangerous, do you think?
Well, they've got weapons everywhere. The new players that have come in behind the ball sort of battle and barrass, look to have helped them, but they clearly value their offence. They're generally a scoring threat. Last week might have been a little bit of an outlier there, sort of early in the game, but even late you can sort of see how they can be a challenge for the opposition when they get the game a bit more on their terms. I think even before they move their way up the ladder, they have been a good sort of stoppage, contested ball team. Meek's doing a good job in there. Newcomb's been a very good player for a long time. So we don't look at it sort of thinking, well, Day was absolutely kind of critical to that midfield. Obviously he's a very good player and going out hurts them, but it's not as if they're short on depth in there. So I haven't even got to the forward half of the ground where they're obviously dangerous as well. So I think the raps on them around the competition are well founded.
Just on the forward half of the ground, Jack Ginnivan has been named in the VFL at this stage. Does that surprise you, considering how dangerous he is at his best?
I try not to second guess the opposition too much. I would just look pretty quickly to who else might be playing, and you can make a pretty strong case for those guys. Maybe it's because of our history, but I've rated Luke Bruce for 300 games or so. So if anyone's playing in front of him, I don't think they could consider themselves to be stiff going out.
Is there a bigger game on Geelong's calendar than Easter Monday against the Hawks?
Good question. I think over the years, like the rivalries that have really sustained, and there are some big occasions, but there is a difference between a big occasion like, say, for example, Queen's Birthday or Anzac Day, and even Easter Monday for that point. It's always going to be a big occasion. But the real rivalries are the ones where good teams have been able to go at each other over a long period of time. And I think for the bulk of, I don't know, I've been at Geelong for 15 odd years, and it's felt like these games have been big, not because it's Easter Monday, but because they've been two good teams. And we're hopeful that's the case this week. I think it's too early in the season to work out where the respective teams stand, but you could make a case to say right at the moment, you know, where it's a big game, less because of the occasion and more because, you know, it's really important in the context of the season, because if you can beat one of the better teams in the competition, it's a game won to the comp. So again, I love the occasion for our supporters, especially like 90,000 plus at the MCG is always a privilege to be a part of. But I place a little bit more weight on, you know, taking on a really good team, you know, close to the peak of their powers. I think they're a pretty strong opposition already.
And just on that, how much is Easter Monday a bit like Showdown, where whatever happens before, whatever happened, this happened before in Hawthorn, their first half against Port Adelaide, it's pretty irrelevant because you know what you're going to get.
I don't want to be dismissive of the big occasion. I know it is a cliche that, you know, the best players rise to the occasion. But I've always, I think I've been consistent with this. I've never wanted our team to be like that, where this is a big occasion, so we're going to try this week. Whereas last week, you know, we're less than our best. Our aspiration is to be at our best every single time it's required. And you know that you're going to have some natural ebbs and flows there. But I don't have much respect for the players that need extra motivation because this is a big game. So, I mean, if it helps, fine, okay. You can use it as an individual, but it's not something we focus on as a team.
How did you see Sam Coney's performance last week? Obviously, has played a bit of the ruck early, but was a full-time defender against one of the most important forwards in the comp and really shut him down.
Yeah, we're really happy with that collective, but Sam in particular has taken on extra responsibility without Jack Henry and College Asney, and we've had sort of 2 weeks where one we didn't have Blitzarves and the other one we didn't have Stewart, and been really pleased with the way he's responded to it. But pleased shouldn't be interpreted as surprised. We rate him really highly, and we have moved him around a little bit. We will continue to do that as the season evolves, but it's very exciting to see him sort of play the way we know he can as a key defender.
How much did you take out of what Paul did in the first half to Hawthorn, Chris? They tried a few different things, Rosie going out half-back, etc.
Yeah, we'll play Rosie at half-back as well if they'll lend us him for a week. Yeah, exactly. Stewart and Rosie would be handy ins, wouldn't they? A little bit, like, it's a real error, in my opinion, to sort of look at a game that, on the balance of what, let's call it the last 20-odd games they've played, appears to be an outlier. So we could kind of try to get some false hope that this is now the new Hawthorn. And we could also make a mistake by saying, all right, Port played them exactly the way they need to be played and we change our game style to try to mimic that. I think we'd end up a poor reproduction. But there are always things you take out of, you know, the last month, especially with teams, and even within that game, depends on how hard you focus on the first half versus the second. And even though they were just so dominant in the first half, it looked like Hawthorn had a chance to win late, which is, I think, one of the marks of a good team.
Just on Jack College, returning in the VFL today, will he have to sort of really earn his spot now that you've got Connor O'Sullivan, Sam Coney, a pretty formidable defence back there?
I think it'd be less about him earning his spot and more us making sure that he's ready to play his best. So when he's ready to play his best, he's in our team. So that's the easy part. The harder part is the bit you referred to with Connor coming in. You know, Connor's not going out of our team anytime soon. So we've got to think about, and obviously we already have thought about how that might play out, but we're looking forward to the day, which we think is coming, where Jack Henry and College Asney are available. We need to sort of think through, you know, how we kind of set up our team. But even the opposition, you know, give you a little bit of a pointer as to what is possible. They choose to play, you know, Weddle, who's a tall man, Sicily back there, Barras, Battle as well. Like, it's not. Sometimes you can look at a backline and say, well, they're tall, but it doesn't matter if you're tall and agile. And we think we sort of do have a similar group of players that could play a similar sort of way.
So a couple of other guys on the injury list, Jack Martin and Cam Guthrie. Are they any closer to return, and how are they tracking?
Yeah, making good progress. So he's going to be a little bit slower, but looks to be making good progress. But we are. This is probably sounding a bit conservative, but we've, at least I've got my head around sort of thinking what the second half of the season would look like with him, and that's, I think, less about his injury and more about just making sure that he can come in and have an impact. You know, the only mistake we can make from here is rushing him back. Once he's missed this much footy, a game or two or three is not going to. It's not. I shouldn't say it's not going to have a huge impact, but if he misses those, it's a better mistake to make. If he can be in really good form at the end of the year, and Jack Martin, we are sort of holding back as well. So they sound similar. They have different sort of situations, but I haven't really got a timeline on Jack, but we are seeing him sort of make some progress. And I think it's worth saying, this is not a guarantee by any stretch, but we brought him in with a view that it might take some time, and it wasn't a 1 year thing. Like, if we need to invest a bit of time so his 26th season is really strong, we think that's a worthwhile investment from our perspective. Is that okay? Yeah.
Just Ted Closey as well, he was named in the VFL today, but was out there. Will he be part of the squad tomorrow, whether that's emergency or...
Yeah, he'll be part of the squad, yeah.
Chris, just a couple of fun ones quickly. Obviously, sort of 24 almost 24 hours away from the game, but it must have been nice to see sort of all the kids outside doing a little Easter egg hunt on Easter Sunday. Well,
it's become a tradition. You know, it's nice knowing we play this game, you know, every year, and it's a privilege to be part of. But it's got a nice feel that, you know, all the kids are in, and you know, we're not. Hopefully, this doesn't sound like we're asking for any sympathy, but and we're certainly not. But I would understand it if some of the families occasionally did, because we don't work normal hours, and the burden on our. I don't think it's ever been harder to play, personally, and that's fine, because, you know, you get the rewards of doing hard things generally in the AFL industry, but the partners and the families don't always understand, you know, what they're up for, or what they never really sign up for it. You just kind of end up in that spot. So every chance we get, it's nice to you know, have them involved and say, hey, look, we're stealing your husband or your partner on Easter Sunday, but maybe you can come in and at least join us for a little bit of the day.
And did you catch Tom Hawkins kicking one for the boundary for Finley? I think it was Friday night.
No, I didn't. I'm surprised he hasn't sent me that. Okay.
I just thought mid-season.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw the big guy only a week or two ago, and he's looking in good shape. Well, it's yeah, maybe he had that game in the back of his mind. He's looking pretty good, isn't he? No, good on him. He deserves it.